Welcome, guys. Welcome to our live Instagram Takeover series. Today we have Dr. Farhan Ahmed, who is assistant professor, and I would like to wait just for a few minutes so he can join us. So, are you here, Dr. Farhan? Yeah, just give us a couple more seconds, please. Yeah, so here we have Dr.
Hi.
Well, welcome to our
Yeah,
show, the live Instagram Takeover series, Dr. Farhan. How are you doing today?
I am doing pretty good. I just switched the mode to the other way around so that we can
Okay.
have a better of talking to each other.
Okay, that's great. So first of all, I would like you to introduce to our audience. So all our viewers, so this is Dr. Farhan Ahmed, who is assistant professor at Creighton University, and who has been teaching their colleagues, their juniors, how to be one of the best candidate in the interviews. So welcome to our doctor, one of the most important live Instagram takeover series, and welcome to Dr. Farhan Ahmed. Welcome, Doctor.
Thank you, Zan. Thank you for inviting me. First, I have my disclaimer here that even though that's my job, I'm an assistant professor at Creighton University, Department of Medicine, Division of Infectious Disease and in Critical Care Medicine. However, the activity that I'm doing today, it has nothing to do with my university. It's my individual effort because what happens that most of the time this sort of content people just disseminate in the name of universities. I want
That's
to
true.
give that as a disclaimer because even before joining this university, right after the day I matched, that's when I decided that, well, I have been through a lot and I have experienced a lot through all that journey, so I want to share it and I will just share it free. So
That's
those are the things I just made it pretty simple, clear disclaimer right before we start.
okay, got it. So, first of all, I would just like to introduce about our show that the goal of our show and a company is to introduce to the ideas and the people who could actually help the people execute on their dreams to get into the residency programs. So today our topic is how the students could be valuable in the eyes of the residency programs. For example, if we are interviewing like a couple of uh, programs, so what should be our strategy right in the start of the season? So what do you think, and what's your opinion on this?
I think it's a great opening question. It's pretty broad discussion when it comes to residency interviews, and I will just summarize the whole process. You know, once you apply for residency spots, uh, it takes a while for program to review the applications, and then you start getting the interviews. The process may take a while, few weeks, and that is very much challenging for the applicants who have put so much effort into this. And that is it. I would say it's a really, really stressful time where at one point they really want to express themselves, but at the same time, with all the interview crunch and stuff, they get really stressed out. So having a good balance, and when I say that, that means getting yourself ready for what you're gonna present in the next few weeks, right? Because you, till that point, you were all working on your medical knowledge, I would say, and visiting the hospital, seeing patients. But this is a whole different ballgame where you just have to express this whole effort that you did over the course of months and years. Now you just want to express yourself in such an effective way that I'm the right person and you have to take me. If you miss this deal, you're going to miss a big thing, right? So, so the way it works that even before you get an interview, there are certain simple things. Get yourself ready for it. When I say get yourself ready for it, start getting content ready. You know, you just have to speak about yourself someday,
Okay.
depending upon which program it is. So it's not about when will I get the first interview. That should not be the focus. Because if you start focusing on that part, that way you will get more stressful and then you will lose the quality time. So the first thing I would say, even before getting the first interview, I usually say that get your thoughts ready, right? I would say that familiarize yourself with your whys, like why you started doing this whole thing, right?
Mhm.
That's the key thing. And for this, you don't have to wait till you get your first interview.
That's
So once you're done with that, then get yourself comfortable with tell me about yourself, because this is the question that will most likely be asked, and it is not something that you will think once you will get your first interview. You will be thinking about it every day when you started preparing for USMLE.
that's
The answer for this question doesn't come when you get your first interview. The answer comes right the day one when you submitted the fee for USMLE.
that's
That's what I would say. If you start thinking about this question that day, you will be very comfortable answering this question, right? So that doesn't need an interview call for you to come. The third thing is remember your efforts. You did a lot of work. I will say that it's not like someone got an interview out of nowhere. You put a great effort. You know, it's a stressful job. So remember your bad effort and compose your thoughts. So those are the things, right? That is before interview. And once you get an interview, I think I will just summarize there as well. You know, you have to just review the program in detail. That's number one thing. And then research and explore the academic profiles of the program directors. That's the key thing. You know, you will be talking to the program directors on the day of interview. If you know them, what sort of work they have done, that way you will be more comfortable and you will know what sort of topic they like, right? Let's suppose if you start discussing about the same thing on which they work, think about matching your frequency with their thought process, and you will be a different ball game as compared to someone who doesn't know what that person actually spent most of his time and you're nowhere. And then familiarize yourself with the hospital, right? There are certain questions the candidate asks, and then those are pretty much well expressed on their website. So if you ask those questions on the day of interview, that means that the person has not reviewed the program in detail and they just showed up on the day of interview, right? And even for me, you know, and I've been part of many fellowship interviews and not that much in the residency interviews, but I know in your hindsight, if an applicant asks me a question for which, because we as a program members, we spend a lot of time in preparing our websites, right?
that's
That means we put a lot of data there. So if someone asks me a question which is pretty much clearly written on the website, the first impression it gives me that, well, this person has not, you know, I don't know whether he looked into it or not, and that indirectly tells me that how much interested is he, right? Even though he verbally says that, oh, I'm super excited, I want to be. Well, he didn't even know what was written right up on the first page of the website. I don't know what does his interest mean, right?
yeah,
So that's one thing. On the day of interview, so that is all this pre-interview. On the day of interview, and it depends whether you're doing a virtual interview or in-person interview, right? It all depends. And so for now, I mean, most of the things are about the in-person interview. And when it comes to that, it all depends on various aspects to that. Number one, technical aspects. You know, this is a whole new different thing. And I was just discussing about this and was recently listening to a podcast where they were comparing in-person versus virtual interview and particularly talking about if someone is really good if you meet them in person, however, he's not a good technical guy, you know, he can't fix the camera right way, he can't fix the light right way, it doesn't mean that he's not a good doctor, right?
that's
I don't consider that as a good case, but unfortunately, that's what we have to deal with, right? We are communicating on the camera, so you just have to familiarize yourself. So that's where it comes. The next thing is the eye contact, even though right now we are not having an ideal eye contact, because we are not talking on our the desktops. We are using our cell phones. On the day of interview, you are not using your cell phone. So for now, I will I will be okay with our eye contact, but on the day of interview, you just have to. And the third thing is, you will. What I would suggest that most of the time there are certain questions that you will be asked anyway. So just record your video, see how you look like when you're answering that question, right?
okay.
It's simple and easy way. For example, if someone asks you, tell me about yourself, just record a video of yourself and then watch it, right? See how you look like. I mean, that's all what you can do even before the day of interview. That way you will know that, okay, when I answer this question, that's what how I look like. And then see, if you like yourself, then that means that the person interviewing you will like the way you answer that question, right? So that's a simple and easy way. And finally, remember to stay mute because there are certain things where keeping quiet is equally important. What I have seen most of the time recently with all these new technology and Zoom and stuff, people sometimes in the flow of communication just forgot that there's certain times when they just have to put mute button on, right? It's not like all the time. And that is what it is. I mean, you just spoke in a really absolutely great way and all of a sudden you forgot to press the mute button and then it all went in the wrong direction. So that's there. So that's the day of interview, which is totally different when you go to the in-person interview, which is, I will leave it for now. I'll leave it I mean, there are many other aspects that we need to look into it. And finally, once you're done with the interview, there are certain aspects about post-interview communication. I think that we will highlight later on if you get any sort of question. And finally, to just summarize, and I think I just went into a lot more detail. I just wanted to throw these things right away because I know people who are listening. I don't want them to lose the interest right away if I'm talking about random stuff. I just want to give the highlights right away. So I will summarize, and I was just talking to you about this. One of my mentors told me, and that's just I will quote here. That is, there are like 10 steps to put a central line in a proper way. However, there are 1,000 ways to just mess up the central line process. Same I will quote here.
Okay.
There may be like 10 or 12 steps to go for the interview in a proper way. However, there may be 1,000 ways that you can just mess up your interview. So, but having said that, I don't want you to get stressed out about this. It's so simple and easy. If you follow the pattern that I told you already, and I think every person is an individual. So that's the last thing I would say. You don't have to compare yourself with someone else. You yourself is now a brand. That's what I would say.
That's
If you start comparing yourself with someone else, try to be someone like else. Like, for example, it happened to me as well. You know, when I was during my interview season, there are a few other colleagues who were just preparing the interview with me, and for some reason they look more reasonable to me, and I was like, no, I should behave like them. But to be honest, that is their personality. I should have something which is just my own trademark. Explore that trademark and just hammer that trademark on the day of interview.
Yeah, that's true. So everybody is his own trademark. I believe in this. And I also do believe that you mentioned about the aura because the first 3 minutes are the very important in the eyes of the program directors because when you go there, it's your aura, how you speak and how you behave in front of them. So I guess they decide within the first 5 minutes that do we have to take this candidate or not, right? Because
I agree. You know, I totally agree, and that's what it is. Because what's the happen? And I got this thing from a history taking part of it. Because when I joined the ID fellowship, most of the content of the ID fellowship patient encounter is based on proper history,
okay.
and a proper attention span is just like ranging between 52 to 62 seconds. Right? When you start a communication, first 50 to 60 seconds is where our communication stay the attention span. After that, we just lose the track. So just make sure that if you answer a question, the right thing should be upfront. And then you can talk about in the detail if you have more time.
Okay, got it. That's absolutely true. So yeah, so I guess now we can go on what are the common mistakes which you have seen in your eyes, like being an interviewer from the last couple of years, that what are the most common mistakes which the candidates are making? For example, it could be anything. For example, in a question, tell me about yourself. Like people start reiterating their own CV for more than 3 to 4 minutes, and they just the person who is interviewing get bored. So what do you think about this?
I think it's a great question again. As I said earlier, the whole interview process, I divided it into three steps: pre-interview, on the day of interview, and the post-interview, right? And each of these steps have further subcomponents where candidate may lose track. For example, when it comes to pre-interview, right, most of the time it happens that people, and that used to happen before, not right now, and people used to get like 20, 30 interviews, and they couldn't get a proper time to just dig through the detail of a program. So I would say that research and explore the academic profile. That's the key thing. Most of the time it happens that you go to the interview and you, for example, there are many program directors who are authors of books, right? Or there are many program directors who have so much big verified profiles on Twitter, right? They share so much details of their academic work, right? So remember and keep that thing in mind that you at least explore those people, explore their academic profile, what sort of citations they have, what sort of academic work they did, right? Most of the people lose that part, and that is all just pre-interview, how you look into it, right? So never forget to do that. Always make sure that you have digged into those details. The other thing that I will highlight on the pre-interview aspect is familiarize yourself with the hospital system. Because the reason I said that is just because that will give you a clue that what sort of question you will answer or what sort of question you may ask, right? Both ways. If you know a program is not offering any interventional cardiology just because they don't have a cath lab for now, that means that on the day of interview, you will not hammer that point that much because you know that they may not have a cath lab, right? If you ask any questions, it will indirectly give an impression both ways. Number one, that applicant didn't dig into the program. Number two, this program may not be his preferred spot, which is not what you wanted to do, right? So that's the next thing, pre-interview, explore where are you going and what sort of things they offer. Number three, and that is just dissect the program website. And that I told earlier. On the day of interview, as I said, most of the time when it comes to virtual interview, apart from technical aspects that I will not go into, most of the what happens is candidate sometimes get into this question that what do you want to do in next 5 years or what do you want to do in next 10 years? And that is what a very catchy question because right now you are interviewing for a residency spot. And we know that eventually everyone wants to, or most of the applicant may want to do a fellowship, right? But at the same time, you are appearing for a residency interview. So you just have to maintain your focus because if you start so much focusing on the fellowship, you may end up in a spiral of questions that you may yourself feel very uncomfortable. And that's honest because most of the time you don't know what you will be doing after 5 years. And it's just the way it is, right? So maintaining your focus on the day of interview is key thing. And that's where most of the applicants lose track. And on the same aspect, on the day of interview, remember your whys, just revise themselves. Third thing that I will highlight, most of the applicants, what they do, particularly about IMGs, they just try to remember the whole answers. Now, what happens once you try to, I mean, that's how we did our matriculation. We just remembered and memorized the whole book and just pasted it on the day of exam. Now, this doesn't work here, right? You can put your highlight points on the paper somewhere, but don't try to memorize the whole answer because that what will happen that you will try to just replicate that answer, lose track, forget that answer, and then you will get stressed out. That's the thing. Another problem on the day of interview, what happens that with this virtual interview particularly, give a time to think about the question. Just process the question and then answer. 1 or 2 second pause is okay. Most of the time what happens in the whole excitement of just answering the question, what do? You just start speaking. After 2, 3 sentences, you just lose the train of thought and you're like, okay, what I was talking about, right? So just compose your answer before you start speaking. Once you're done with that, you will be feeling very comfortable answering your question. I think those are the key things. And finally, as I said, be logical. Be logical. Most of the time, we start talking about certain things that our resume, our whole career not reflect, right? For example, I will start bragging about my volunteer efforts and I did this and I did this, where actually I never had done that, right? So I mean, it's just because we fill our profile just to show that we were doing everything or anything, but just be very logical and have a clarity in your thoughts. So those are the things most of the time applicants just lose track of them, and then in that situation they may not be in a proper spot to answer a question in a proper way.
Got it. I believe, yeah, these are the most important factors which have a profound impact, like how the interviewers will rank you as a candidate. So what do you think, for example, if there is a candidate who comes to you and you ask a different question and he start reiterating a different answer. So what do you think about this?
Well, I'll give you an example. I'll not name, I'll just make an example. For example, a couple of months ago, I was interviewing one of the applicant for infectious disease fellowship, right?
Okay.
So I asked him a question that, what do you like about infectious disease, right?
Okay.
That was sort of a simple question. I mean, someone can ask you, what do you like about internal medicine, to be honest, if you talk about residency. So I asked him this. And I knew that he is interested in infectious disease. That's why he applied for the fellowship. I didn't want to know why he is interested in infectious disease fellowship. What I really want to know that his real interest? Because those who are really interested, they know what infectious disease is about. Ideally, what I wanted to hear, I wanted him to tell me that, well, there are many aspects in it. Infectious disease is not just about antibiotics. It is about HIV. It's about tropical medicine. It's about prevention. It's about public health, all those things. out of all these, I think I'm more inclined toward HIV, any sort of thing. So that will indirectly give me an idea that how much ready he is about jumping into what he's about to do, right? And instead, what exactly he started doing in such a weird way. And he just was coming up with very weird, broad spectrum sort of answers. Like, okay, the thing I like, I want to say that. I mean, he was using all these connecting sentences just to reach his actual train of thought, and ended up to the point where he said, "Oh, I like talking to the people," and infectious disease is one of those fellowships where we'll talk to most of the people and interact and have a better communication opportunities. I, for a moment, thought, well, in that case, you can just be joining a call center. You don't need to be an infectious
That's
disease.
true, yeah.
Right? So it's just the thing. You just have to be logical in your thoughts that, if that's where people lose track of stuff. So
That's
what I usually do, I redirect them. It's not about, I usually make them very comfortable. And I think you will be in the same spot. Now, one thing I will differentiate between, and I think it's important to highlight. Well, there's a big difference between fellowship interviews and the residency interviews. Since we are talking about the residency interviews, I will say that these interviews are basically to rule out. These are not for ruling in. And when I say that, that means all the applicants will do good on the day of interview, right? It's just a quick filter where a person who is interviewing you is just trying to see if there is anything which is not good, right? And when I say not good, it's just mostly about communication skills. For example, consider this interview is going on, the residency interview is going on to select an intern, right? Now, on my regular day, what I want my intern to do, for example, once I'm done with my rounds, right, I tell my intern that you have to talk to these, and these subspecialties. You have to consult them, right? And whatever recommendations they have, then you will share it with me. And then we as a team will decide that whether or not we need to follow those recommendations, yes or no, right? So what I want my intern to be like, he need to be like really honest. Number one, he need to have the thought process gathered. Like there's a lot going on with the patient. We just need to ask 2 or 3 line simple questions. So one thing I look into that he should be able to summarize the thought process. That's number one. Number two, he should be able to communicate pretty clear what he wanted to ask. Communicate the question in a very appropriate way. So that's what when I'm listening to the answer of any applicant, that means I'm trying to get those mark tick. Like, well, he had a good thought process is very composed. Number two, he's honest and true, right? Because let's say the other teams, uh, taking an example of consult service, right? The other consult service said that, okay, I don't think you should start furosemide, it should be stopped. Well, I might have some thought process behind starting furosemide, but the other consult service did not like it. So he should be honest and tell me, they told this. So those are the things that honesty, composed thought process, clarity in mind, those sort of things that I look for.
So I believe these are all the factors which we do have to consider when we are interviewing any program. And also, for example, we were discussing about the residency questions which we have to ask from the residency programs. And one of my mentor told me that don't ask a single liner question. Like when you ask a single liner question, this means that you got a list from your senior who has given you a bunch of questions and you are just asking that, and you're not actually meaning that question, you are just asking because you want to ask, you don't want to ask, sorry. So for example, if even if something is listed on the website, for example, I can give you an example about there was a hospital, uh, they had mentioned about point of care ultrasound, but they did not explain much about that on their website. And what's the right strategy was to, even if that was listed on the website, but if I have to ask any this type of question from any program or that specific program, I could go into details that you have listed point of care ultrasound on your website, but I'm a person who is really interested to learn point of care ultrasound during my residency. So if you could please enlighten me more about that. So what do you believe, this type of question is a better way, or we could go in just a normal way that we can ask a single liner question?
I agree with that. I think that will indirectly reflect that how well you know about the program. And that indirectly would tell me what are your goals. For example, you gave an excellent example. Uh,
Thank you.
Point of care ultrasound. It's just getting so much familiarity, particularly in internal medicine right now. Most of the hospitalist rounding teams, they are trying to equip their teams with a point of care ultrasound, right? And as a new team member, you want to learn this skill. So you can definitely ask an open-ended question that, well, my future goals are that apart from um, grooming myself as a good resident. I just want to have some hands-on skills on the top of that, and I think point of care ultrasound is a great thing to have, and how you train your residents to develop that skill. So that is just an open-ended question, right? Similarly, for example, when I was interviewing at that time, antibiotic stewardship was an emerging topic. There was a lot of discussion about programs and hospitals. They were trying to establish some sort of antibiotic stewardship program in their hospitals, right? So I always, like most of the time, if I had no other questions, I usually used to ask them, that I think that this is an exciting aspect of internal medicine, particularly when you start thinking about be wise in your decision making when it comes to selection of antibiotics. So if your hospital has any sort of program established for antibiotic stewardship, I really want to be a part of it, things like that. And how you and same goes with every subspecialty. I just gave an example of like infectious disease because that's what my field is. But at the same time, take an example of critical care. You can say that, okay, most of the programs are making it obligatory that their residents should have FCCS course, fundamental critical care support course, right? Do you have that sort of course? And if that is not there, what are your efforts and what direction? I mean, things like that. Depending upon what you actually want to do. For example, those who are interested in cardiology, they can come up with their any field of interest question. Those are like an open-ended question, which not only generate a new discussion, but it just will let the interviewer keep thinking about yourself that yes, this candidate is something different than others.
Yeah, that's definitely true. So, for example, if I also want to ask about any program that has a specific 30-minute interview with a candidate. So, what if they have finished all the questions within 20 minutes and you are now left with the next 10 minutes? So, what a candidate's approach should be during this 10 minutes?
I think that's another very important question, and that happens many times. Uh, for example, uh, that happens mostly in the university programs because their uh, programs are, so diverse, and now the pattern is changing. What exactly is happening that previously when I used to interview for the residency spots, not that far ago, but in 2014, it was all about question and answers. Like the interviewer asks a question and then you answer. Now it's reciprocal. The interviewer just give a brief summary and then just leave it to you to ask questions, right? And then the discussion goes about what you will ask, and that generates the whole interview discussion. And I think that's equally possible that there are certain times, and that's why I said number one, that's when the research profile or academic profile of the interviewer will help you. Number one,
Okay.
right? For example, if you know that person is currently working on some project, you can simply ask him, I saw you are working on this,
Okay.
right? What is your experience? And I really like that. I want to be a part of it in future or want to do something like that. I'm just giving an example. The other thing that will help you there is book reading. That's what I suggest. Or if you are doing any ongoing active stuff, for example, what I used to do, I used to read books during my interview season, like my favorite books, right? And that gave me a lot of content for the discussion on the day of interview, right?
Okay.
So
Got it.
keep in mind that you should have some sort of reading process going on an active basis so that you will not get depleted about what you need to talk on that day. I think it happens, for example, I recall, and I'll quote an example, just complete the answer. I was interviewing at one place and they had this dedicated interview with a microbiologist
Okay.
who was pretty much focused on bacteria, right? Me, who has not even, ever been into a microbiology lab apart from my med school. Now I have to sit there and talk about 30 minutes of the bacteria, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, so I just started talking about one of my case reports and sharing that, well, I did uh, that work in the past, and I think that really was a good learning process. And I believe working with you in future on these aspects will really add to my academic work. So
Okay.
I started discussion on those lines that I like what you do, and I think that is exciting. I have done this thing at a very micro level before, but I think now, hopefully, if we work together in future, I think this is what I really want to cooperate and collaborate with you, and we'll be working on it together. So that way, you will just give a positive aspect that yes, you want to be there, you have something in your mind. But that way, you will just go through those 10 minutes.
Oh, got it. Okay. So yeah, I guess that's one of the great strategy to go through their profile and discuss the stuff which you can. But I would say don't just mess up that 10 minutes that if you have impressed them for initial 20 minutes and by the rest of the 10 minutes you are just asking just dumb questions, then it could create a worse scenario.
That's true. Most of the applicants, just if they don't have any, for example, questions related to the program, what I have seen, they just open up the topic and they start discussing about the city, how is the overall living situation where they live. For example, in Omaha, most of the applicants have this question: how is the Midwest? How is the transition? When they just asked me that when I transitioned, when I moved from Northeast to Midwest, what was the transition like? And did I feel it a good transition, a bad transition, or what advice you will get? Most of the time, what I usually used to do, I usually end up asking for advice, right? If you are, that's just my backup strategy. If you are run out of all your questions, you have nothing to ask, nothing,
Mm-hmm.
you have no topic to discuss, then you are left with requesting for advice, right? And that is the thing. I usually don't go for it right up front, but I think that is just all depend. That all depends how the interview session went until that point. Ideally, if it was a good interview session, then you should not be depleted, and you should not be to the point where I lost the content to talk about. So I think most of the time it all depends upon how you compose your answer.
Got it. Okay. I know, yeah, these can have very profound impact on the interviewers. So yeah, thank you so much, Dr. Farhan. And let's, I guess, take a few questions because we are heading towards that time. So let me see, quickly go over the questions if we have any. Let me go over the chat. Okay. So yeah, someone here asked about the behavior questions, like how to tackle the behavior questions and how to prepare for that. So do you want to go ahead?
I mean, those questions are open-ended questions. There is no wrong answer to that, and I will just make everyone comfortable by saying that it's not for the residency interview. It was when I used to interview for the hospitalist position back in Rochester General Hospital. So they had 5 question sets, and one of the questions was always about behavioral aspect, right? So it's not like a USMLE question where there's one right answer. No, it's not like that.
Okay.
This is this is just an open-ended question where there's no wrong answer. So first you need to make yourself comfortable by understanding that these sort of questions, these are just there to have a better understanding about your thought process. And I don't think you will mess up this question because there's no right answer to those.
That,
I mean, to be honest, this is just to understand yourself in a better way.
okay, that's true. So yeah, that's absolutely true that there is no right or wrong answer for the behavior one. Just be like we have to make sure that we are not answering any red flag in that.
Yeah.
So yeah, let's move to the next question, which is by Laiba. She asked how to leave a memorable impact on the whole faculty.
There's no one single thing that you can do on the day of interview, to be honest. As I said, residency interviews are pretty short. They are primarily for the rule out instead of rule in. Most of the time, candidates just try to overperform, and in that situation, they open more aspects to just mess up, right? So when I say to just be yourself, that means be yourself doesn't mean just be casual. It means be logical, have clarity of thoughts, uh, maintain a good communication practices. Those are the things. If you just follow those simple rules, they will clearly feel that this is a different person.
Okay, that's great. So yeah, there is one candidate with Israr. He said, "You are great, Dr. Farhan," or Dr. Farhan. Okay, so I believe we don't have any other questions here. Oh yeah, so there is one question. So me with an attempt listening how to tackle in or interviews. Oh, okay, that's not a good question actually. Yeah, we are gonna post this video on our YouTube channel as well and also on the Instagram. So if you guys did not make up before time, so you could listen here. Yeah.
I think I will just extrapolate on that question, even though it was not well composed. But I will say that most of the applicants that I mentor and I tell them, if you got an interview, that means on the day of interview, there's no difference between you or someone else who had an excellent profile. Just keep in mind,
Mm-hmm.
if they picked you to just talk to you, that means there's no difference. And you have equal chance to match in that program. If you keep that mindset, if you go on the interview with that mindset, that will really improve. Because most of that, when I started interviewing for the first 2, 3 interviews, I was always like, well, there were 4 other applicants in the room. All of them had like 250s and they had like 10 research projects ongoing.
Yeah.
I was nowhere in front of them. If you start thinking like that, that means you lost there. You were a loser just because of that thought process.
Yes.
I used to be so confident because I went there and won one of this program. Now I'm trying to now I'm recall all that. So this is I'll not name the hospital, but what they did, they just put all the 23 applicants on the day of interview in one single room,
Okay.
and out of those, I actually knew every IMG from Pakistan who was sitting in that room. Right, I knew them because I worked with them. And I know almost most of them may have a better profile than me, right?
Okay.
But I was looking so much positive and confident. Actually, they were looking at me that, oh, did you invent something new just a day ago? Why are you looking so confident? I was like, well, it's an honor for me, be here. There were so many people trying to apply and trying to come here. And I have been chosen to just appear and share my thoughts. I think that's an honor for me. I don't know what sort of work you have done, but I think today is an equal chance for me, and I was just going to do it. So
Yes.
that sort of confidence, if you have, then I think you will be performing pretty well.
That's true. So this is what we are explaining that our aura matters. Like even if we are confident, we look confident. It's this is something which the board attracts as a magnet. So I would say that if you are looking confident, you are talking with confidence, so there is nothing else that you need on the day of the interview. So yeah.
The other thing most of the applicants get scared about is just that someone asked me uh, yesterday, a day before, that I have a temp, I have a gap, all sort of thing. Well, if they particularly ask you about it, then get worried about it. I mean, I don't think program will ask about it. If they had that concern, they would not have ever,
Given.
called you for the interview, right?
That's true.
Since they called you, that means that they are not worried about that gap. They are not worried about that grade.
Yeah, that's true. The next question we got is, do you ever ask educational knowledge questions like tell me about sepsis?
Uh, I have not been asked about it. Those sort of questions are not really asked. What they can actually do. For example, if someone really asked you about it, for one of my, I'm trying to recall which place was this, but they asked me about one of my case reports. They said, "Oh, you presented a poster about rhinovirus. Tell me about that." So they don't. Why they ask this question? That's the key thing. They're actually indirectly trying to assess your communication skills. That's what it is. They don't want you to tell exactly about numbers of isomers and stuff, right? Number of genetic codes and stuff. No, it's not. They don't want you to tell about exact treatment. They don't want to tell you about exact labs and stuff. No.
Okay, got
They just want to tell that how well you can summarize or present your work. So that's another aspect. Remember about what sort of work you have done, and for all those people who had done some research, keep in mind that they should be ready to talk about their work in 5 or 6 sentences in a very brief and logical way. I mean, that's what the key thing is. If you have done a lot of work on, for example, sepsis, then just be ready to just share your work in a nice and simple way.
Got it. Okay. Yeah, that's great. So yeah, Dr. Farhan, do you want to go ahead with the next few questions, or we can answer that later on, or we can send the responses to the candidate directly? Because I know we invited you for 20 minutes, but it's like over more than 40 minutes right now.
And I think we'll just well, answer the rest of the questions in the comment section.
Oh, okay, that's great. Okay. So yeah, so the next question, which is one of the most important one, what qualities faculty are looking for in a resident, and what adjectives we should be using in the interviews?
I think I will name four. So
Okay.
that's a good question. I would say a composed personality. I would say they're looking for a confident outlook. They're looking for someone who discuss in a logical way, and they are looking for clarity of thoughts. If you have that, you nailed it.
Okay, got it. So these fours, but we have to give examples too. For example, if I'm saying that I'm adaptable, I have to prove to the program that how am I adaptable by giving the previous examples, right?
Yeah, I mean, you can share stuff. For example, you can say about one of your works you did, and during that time, for example, I was part of the team that was doing a QI project, right? So I was the prime investigator on that, and I just really used to quote that as example that, well, I was during that project, since I was heading the team, that's where I learned the leadership skills, and I think that's what gave me an idea how to lead a team and how to communicate as a team leader. And from that day onward, I just enjoyed that stuff.
Got it. Okay. So yeah, I guess these were the questions which we went through all of them, and the last thing which I can read in front of me is I got a communication skills. Apart from that, what are the others?
Others, as I said earlier, know your whys, why you started this whole process. Get ready to answer your whys. I think that's the key thing. Look at your resume, look at your CV, and see what can generate a question, and try to answer your whys ahead of the day of interview. Like, for example, why you think you want to be in the internal medicine, or if you say that, okay, I want to be a cardiologist in future after 10 year I see myself as a cardiologist, and why you want to do it. I mean, simple questions, simple. So get ready with your whys, and get ready to answer about, tell me about yourselves. I think that's what I will say.
Okay, got it. So yeah, so I guess the last question, which is one of the most important one, and I get this question so many times. Uh, there is a girl who is Haya. She's asking about only interview pull through a contact, sorry. Do I stand a chance, or and how to prove yourself worthy? So yeah, I get this question so many times that we get an invite by our contact. So what do you think? Is it a real interview, or it's just because of they want to make me happy, or and what do you think a candidate should be thinking in this?
So let me explain the process, how the pull the interview thing works.
Okay.
Most of the places, if you ask someone to request the review committee to review your application, ideally what happens that that person doesn't like order them to generate an interview. That doesn't happen, right?
Okay.
They say that, okay, I have what I think is a reasonable applicant. Why don't you take a look at his or her profile and see what you think if this candidate is eligible to get an interview, right?
Okay.
And that's when they look at the profile and they say, okay, looks a reasonable candidate, we can send them an interview. So keep that thing in mind. If you get an interview on someone's request, it doesn't mean that that interview doesn't count. It's just because if you start thinking in a way that, well, this was a interview which someone else pulled for me, then you will not look confident on the day of interview.
That's true.
So I would say that just delete that thought from your mind that someone just pulled it for you. It's an interview and it's an opportunity.
That's true. So yeah, also I do believe that courtesy interviews don't exist, because if a program has to select 15 candidates, they are doing the best they can, and they send the invites to only those candidates who they think they can be an appropriate fit to their program. So yeah, do believe in yourselves.
I mean, people ask me so many times, can you, and this will happen again today, you know. I'm going to tell you, I'm going to be very honest.
Okay.
This happened many times. And I really share their profiles, and I cannot like order a program director that, okay, can you give an interview? No, it doesn't work like that. So if it is, so if someone is not getting an interview, it's not like me not working for them. It's not like things are delayed or something. It's just because there is a review committee and they take a look at it, and if they don't think this is a reasonable candidate,
You don't.
uh,
Yeah.
yeah,
Even if you have like your own family members in the program will still look at your application. If they think you are not will not be an appropriate fit, they will not give you an invite.
yeah. And reciprocal, you know, if you get an invite, it doesn't mean that it was all due to them. It was yourself, you know, you put so much effort. Your effort started from the day when you started thinking about going to the med school, right? It's not like all people go to med school. Most of what happens with the current modern world, people just lost that interest. You know, people think that, well, there are so many other eye-catching things happening in the world. Why should I be a med school? Remember that you followed this pathway when everyone else was just enjoying parties, and you said, no, I want to be a doctor. I want to learn. I want to be this, right? So your effort started from that day. So keep that thing in mind. It's not about someone else pulling interview for you. So I just keep my thought in that way.
Oh, got it. Okay. Well, thank you so much, Dr. Farhan, for joining us, and we will go live in the upcoming weeks with you again and ask more questions about it. I believe I also got some comments here on the chat that this was amazing, and they like you. They want to do another session. So yeah, definitely we're gonna do another session with you in the upcoming weeks. And I'm
Yeah, we're probably doing close to ranking, and I think that's when most of the people will have a lot of questions.
Yeah, definitely, Sal. Well, thank you so much and have a great rest of the day and enjoy your day.
Thank you so much. Have a good day.
Bye-bye.
Good luck.
Thank you.